kids that are chronically traumatized growing up, that it happens repetitiously, and how does that show up with them as adults? Well, again, with everything being on a continuum, it can show up in a variety of ways as an adult. So I just wanted to give some examples, and in fact, some are able to use their creativity and actually entertain us with scaring us in horror movies from the trauma that is undealt with and still going around inside of them, because they haven't they have it's undealt with trauma, and so they're not fully aware of what they're doing to the other person. For them, it's funny, it's humor, because they're detached from it and they're not at all connected to their trauma, or they wouldn't have been able to do the things they did, I don't think. Because it does, after a while, when it happens over and over, it becomes their character if it's not healed. It's not who they really are. Again, it's who they had to become. And so I wanted to talk about some of the people, like, for example, I know Alfred Hitchcock, when he was 5 or 6 years old, his parents thought that when he got caught stealing, that to have the police come to his house and take him to jail and actually lock him up in a prison cell, a jail cell, that would teach him a lesson. And that wasn't the only thing that happened, but that was one of the ones that happened. And so we can see this handcuff theme for him play out in his movies, and also in the way that he treated his actors, which there's a lot of stories about that. But, like, for example, one time he had a man and a woman in one of the scenes. They were going to have to be handcuffed together. And so early in the morning, he handcuffed them, and then they did the scene and it was over. And after it was over, he really didn't, but he acted like he lost the key. So he thought it was funny to watch them have to be handcuffed all day long together when they didn't want to be. And another time, his handcuff thing came out because he was handcuffed when he was taken to that prison cell at 5 years old. And so when he was leaving one time, he said to a cameraman, he goes, "Hey, I'll tell you what," he goes, "if you can stay handcuffed to one of the cameras here on set the whole night, I'll give you an extra week's salary." Cameraman said, "Sure, I'll do that." And so he allowed Alfred Hitchcock to handcuff him to the camera. And then just as Alfred Hitchcock was leaving, he, again, thinking this was funny, offered the man a brandy and gave it to him, which the man didn't find out till later was laced with laxatives. So you see what I'm saying? It comes out in ways where they don't recognize that they're playing out their trauma, that it's not humor, it's not funny. And so these things have to be pointed out to them. It's like people when they're sitting there and they're splitting, or they're going invisible, or they've left the room. They don't know it sometimes. I can remember being in my early 20s and I'd be sitting at a table with people and they'd say, "Hey, where'd you go?" And I'd be like, "What do you mean?" And they would say it just looked like there was like this glazed stare over my face, and it just looked like I was gone. But I didn't know it, because in actuality, I heard all the conversations. I knew everything that was going on in the room. So I was not even aware that that was happening. And when I heard it enough times, that's what made me go, "Oh, something's going on here." So, those are some of the things that are happening as an adult. Like, there was a man I worked with, and his 8-year-old didn't take the trash out. We're talking about the big outside trash can that had a lot of stuff in it. And so because his son didn't take the trash out, he took his son out to the backyard and he turned the trash can upside down on his head with all the trash coming out on him, and made him stay in the trash can for a while. And when I was talking to this man, he could not understand what the big deal was. He couldn't see it. When I heard his story of how he grew up, I could understand how he didn't see it. So a lot of times there's, we've talked about before how, if they're doing that, the odds are that it's pretty much been done to them. And so they're just reenacting that out, and there's a lot of anger, a lot of rage there in them. Alfred Hitchcock, and when he was doing the film Stranger on a Train, he what he thought was funny was that if when his daughter wanted to go on the Ferris wheel, because it was on the movie set there, and so she just said, hey, can I go ahead and ride on that? And so he was like, okay. So because it was a movie set Ferris wheel, there was nobody else there on it. So when she got on there, he went over to the person that was running the Ferris wheel, and he said, listen, when she gets up to the very top, stop the Ferris wheel and turn off all the lights. And it was pitch black, and she was up there. And then he said, leave her up there for an hour. And he walked away. And she was hysterical. He didn't see the trauma in that. That was humorous. That was his humor. And then after an hour, he came back or whatever. So, there's different ways. I'll tell you one other story. I heard that Stephen King, one time when his kids were little, he was taking them to the movies, and so they always wanted to sit in the second and third row, like a lot of times little kids do when they get to the movies. They want to be up close, and he didn't like it. He didn't like that feeling of being that close up to the screen. So he came up with the idea of telling them that, he said, you know what, if we sit too close, he goes, this is what I've heard, is that you can fall into the movie screen and you can't ever get back out. And he said, there was the main characters there up front, and he said, look behind them. He goes, see all those people behind the main movie characters? He said, do you think they can afford to pay all those people? No, they can't. Those are people that fell into the movie screen and they can't get back out. His kids never wanted to sit up front next to the movie screen again. But these are the kind of ways that sometimes kids are being talked to now, because it's a generational trauma that's going down the line, and now obviously they're going to have their trauma to deal with. So I just wanted you to think about anything that you might be able to connect with in your life that you feel like was done to you. You may not be acting out the trauma just because you've been traumatized, but I just wanted you to have some ideas and reflect on ways that we play this out, and we don't intend to necessarily hurt people or devastate them. They weren't trying to be sociopaths, but it became a part of who they were. It's not who they are. So I just wanted to leave you with that, and I hope you guys have a good weekend. I hope you've had a great week, and I'll see you next Friday. Bye-bye.